Skiing is something that I've done my whole life. We were skiing in soft, powdery snow, and when I made this turn, I flipped backwards. I do remember floating, like moving through space and then settling in the snow and not being able to feel anything in my lower body. I thought this is bad. I'm not gonna walk.
Meet Chris Ho, second grade teacher, soccer coach, community activist, and now someone with a spinal cord injury.
I can't get out by myself. So we have my home aide arrive at 6:15 at the latest. Today it was Addie. I need help stretching, getting dressed, bowel program, bladder program. It's not easy.
Before my injury, I always thought of people in wheelchairs as just people who aren't able to walk.
I had no idea what it takes to be in a wheelchair.
Before the accident, Chris lived a busy, active life, founding a youth soccer program, teaching social justice to 7-year-olds. Efforts lauded nationwide by organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center.
The workers want lights, the workers want their windows open, fresh air, all these things.
Chris is now making a new life.
Bowel and bladder function. And then there's some for my neuropathy, and then another to help with my spasms.
Following my injury and being in the hospital, I was always in a bed. And it was just very slowly that I started to be able to have more freedom.
You're going to give a wave with your left?
And the biggest step was being able to be in a wheelchair and move myself around, not just be some potted plant that people came to visit, but I could move myself.
Then, while in rehab, Chris saw something he had never imagined, didn't even know existed: a standing wheelchair.
I remember the first time having the chair stand me up and being so happy about that. Being able to stand and look eye to eye reminded me of how much I'd taken that for granted and how wonderful it felt.
To get a standing wheelchair, Chris had to pass a medical test. Could his blood pressure stay high enough for 30 minutes straight?
So it was a real victory for me to be up for more than 30 minutes. I told my family about this. There was such excitement for me. And I was sure now that I would be getting this chair.
Do some standing in the next couple of weeks and do stuff.
Despite the fact that Chris's medical team had prescribed it, Mass Health, the Medicaid agency in Massachusetts, did not see its medical necessity.
When it was denied, I was devastated. How could someone say that standing was not essential for my health?
What Chris knew after the accident is that he'd need good medical care and technology. What he didn't realize is that he'd need legal advocacy to get it.
I needed help from experts who could help me navigate this world that I wasn't used to being part of.
Experts like the Disability Law Center, one of the leading advocacy organizations in Massachusetts for people with disabilities.
The Disability Law Center is a private nonprofit law firm.
Chris, hi.
Hi, I'm here to see Svetlana.
Good. Come on in.
And it was started back in the 1980s to provide for the civil rights of people with disabilities.
One of the reasons why DLC exists is that we have incredibly complicated systems for rationing healthcare with dense regulations, statutes, policies, and people need help to understand the legal standards and also to navigate through the bureaucracy. And that's something that we do well.
So our email address is mail@dlc.
We were very busy. Last year, we had, I think, 10,000 calls.
The Disability Law Center has to choose their cases very carefully to have the greatest impact.
Chris was exactly the kind of candidate that we could realistically help, and at the same time, address a larger systemic issue of the healthcare system that is not always responsive and doesn't always apply the correct standard.
They decide to appeal the Mass Health decision on Chris's behalf. In the United States today, 5.7 million people use wheelchairs. Every one of them needs a wheelchair right for their body and their needs. Based on cost and efficiency, the healthcare system assumes that one size fits all.
If you have this type of injury and you can't move, it's logical that we will provide you a wheelchair, but it's never the wheelchair. As long as somebody can put you in a wheelchair and you can roll yourself out of the apartment, that's basically it.
But to be able to have all this power to be much more mobile and to be able to get onto the subway very easily with this type of chair, whereas with the manual chair it was much more difficult.
And if you think about it, a wheelchair for a person with limited mobility is an extension of his limbs, is an extension of his body. What could be more unique than your own body?
Okay, what's going on today?
Well, one of the thumb screws came out.
For Chris, a standing wheelchair would be the best alternative.
Go back. This is all him standing. This machine doesn't take you and stand you. It uses the body to stand by itself naturally.
Standing helps with digestion, bone density, blood flow, and with pressure ulcers, commonly known as bed sores, and already a problem for Chris.
People who use wheelchairs are more susceptible to pressure sores because they are sitting in the same place for very long periods of time.
The sustained pressure breaks down the skin, causing wounds that become infected.
It's an extremely serious medical complication. More than 2 million people, 2.5 million people suffer from them.
The care, the healing, the cure can be very time-consuming and expensive.
Pressure ulcers cost the U.S. healthcare system between $9 and $11 billion a year. And they can be deadly, killing 60,000 Americans every year, more than automobile accidents. Preventing pressure sores can be a matter of life and death. A standing wheelchair would be a potentially life-saving intervention for Chris, and becomes a key argument in his appeal.
We have to get together 3 pieces of the entire case: the medical part, the legal part, and the human story. Why he's asking for this assistive technology and what difference will it make for him. So all 3 have to make a compelling case that would force the agency to change their mind.
With the clock ticking, Svetlana went to work. Within 30 days, she'll need to become an expert in wheelchair design spinal cord injuries, and Chris's medical history.
It takes time to collect about 500 pages of record, process them, put them in the context of an argument, work with medical professionals, get testimony, go through technical manuals, and to prepare Chris.
The stakes of this hearing were my life, the life that I saw before me being cut down.
Chris's hearing day arrives.
It wasn't a very auspicious start because the room was so small. It wasn't really very easy for me to get the wheelchair in the room. So it just didn't seem like they cared, that they had put thought into what it was like to be in a wheelchair.
A person from the agency spoke for about 30 minutes from a piece of paper, legalese. And as we went along, I could see that his story is lost. We're not talking about him and what he needs. We were just arguing about legal points.
Then they said that they would provide me with a standing frame, which is something you have to get help getting into.
Chris would need the help of a personal care attendant, perhaps 2 people.
And it's stationary.
Stuck to wherever the stander is placed.
And they said that I should stand for 1 hour a day, 5 days a week. And I was just outraged by that. I've really felt shame at times about asking for help. And then when the institutions that are there to help are not concerned first with you, they're concerned with saving money.
The difference what Medicaid is proposing versus what we are proposing was not as significant as one would think. It was $18,000, but if you think about really significant chances of exacerbation of Chris's pressure sores, a week in a hospital would probably cover 10 wheelchairs like that.
As the time was running down, I finally was able to speak. I just showed my great fear and sadness. I explained that my life was to be with kids and my community. I try to convey that sense of what loss I had, but how I was looking to a future. And that future depended on having a standing wheelchair. A few $1,000s more would allow me to do that.
It was a dramatic moment that kind of made us all pause and not think about just legal terms or medical terms, but think about the real effect on a real life of a human being.
A few months later, Chris receives the decision.
I had the chair. I've won the lottery. I don't play the lottery, I've won.
All that comes with that is really liberating emotionally. And it just feels good to be standing, to feel my bones holding me up. These are my legs for getting around. And the ability that it has to stand me up is incredible. Nico.
Chris's story highlights one very simple idea. People facing medical crisis or a chronic impairment obviously understand that they need good medical help. But what they don't realize is that they would probably also need legal help.
And so I had to fight, with my words. And I got help from some lawyers. I don't know if anyone knows what lawyers do.
I needed a champion. And the Disability Law Center was my champion. They understand that health care for people with disabilities is a human right.
People with disabilities are people. They are us. It's an equal opportunity club. At any point, any one of us can be in a position where we will require something.
The next thing.
And we would be so much better off if we just understood disability to be something that's part of life,
Are you looking at the ball?
rather than leave people on their own to fight their own way through the system. Why is it that we can't say, in a wealthy society, we have enough money for Chris to have a standing wheelchair? If that's what he needs to live a meaningful, integrated life, we can do that.